G'day everyone, welcome back to Jed's podcast. Well, I've got a massive episode coming up tonight. Really looking forward to chatting to this absolute legend of a bloke. This person is a journalist and works in the media industry. Welcome to the podcast show, Rudi, and thanks for coming on, mate.
No dramas, Jed. Happy to help out anytime.
No worries at all. Thanks for being here. So my first question is to you. How did you get into journalism, obviously?
So basically, I went to uni to study sport journalism. I decided, I lived overseas for a little while in my sort of mid-20s. And I decided when I came back, I'd go back to uni, and I wanted to study sports journalism because sport is my passion. And there was a degree at La Trobe Uni just around the corner from where I lived. And so, I went there and studied, got the sports journalism degree. And a mate of mine said, he just contacted me out of the blue one day. He told me that Triple M had some jobs going covering the footy that had been offered to him, but he couldn't do it. And could he recommend me? And then, I went in for the interview, got the job, and I've been at Triple M now for 4.5 years covering footy.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, so you just mentioned with uni, obviously. How many years did you have to spend at uni to obviously get a degree to get into journalism and media?
I did a 3-year degree at La Trobe. So, it's a Bachelor of Sports Journalism, 3 years long.
Terrific. Yeah, so with obviously then once you've finished your course, you obviously got a job. Yeah, as you said, you're obviously working at Triple M now. What is your main role at Triple M in Melbourne? Obviously, you're based in Melbourne.
I'm correct. That is true. I'm based in Melbourne. So my role is digital content creator, like a sport digital content creator. So basically, what I mostly do is just cover the footy games and try and cover the stuff that our talent says. So if, say, on our Saturday show, the Saturday Rub, if Damien Barrett breaks some big news, then it's my job to get that out there. I write the article up about what he said and then post that to the various social medias and stuff like that. That's my main job. I also make a lot of images, news images, and other sort of things like that to post. You might have seen some of the content that I make around, I'd say, if you follow the Triple M footy page.
Yeah, I have been. It's awesome.
Yeah, so those are the sort of the main things that I do. I also occasionally, this year, I was lucky enough to actually actually produce a few games to air, which is pretty cool. I'm one of the few people that got to go to a football game in Victoria in 2020. Yeah. So I quite like doing that as well. It's probably, those are the main facets of my job.
Yeah, awesome. Well done. Yeah, so you just mentioned you're obviously lucky enough to obviously go to a couple of games in Victoria this year of AFL, obviously before they moved into interstate, obviously because of the COVID. Did it feel quite strange having, normally in the first round, Carlton and Richmond, you'd say average around 80,000 fans, to have an absolutely empty stadium with no one sitting in the stands? I'm sure that would have been quite strange.
Very, very weird, yeah. So one of the games I produced was Carlton Essendon at the MCG, which is on a Saturday night, which is a game you'd normally expect to have, the 55, 60, 70,000 if both teams are going well. And now it's just completely empty. It was very eerie, really. You have to go in and get your, I had to get my temperature done before I went in, and then it's all just completely empty. It was really interesting. It's just so strange to see the game played like that, and then with, no crowd. It kind of like, it sounded like when you'd watch like the under 18s games with no crowds and stuff, you could just hear the players yelling out to each other, and it was strange. It was a cool experience, and I'm glad I got to do it. But hopefully we get some fans back next year.
Yeah, well, that's right. Well, hopefully things can settle down here in Victoria soon, and then hopefully we'll be allowed to start doing some of the things like the interstate and that are allowed to do at the moment. And I'm sure everyone that loves their footy, or not just their footy or cricket, whatever, I'm sure they're all looking forward to getting back to watching their sports and all sorts of different things. Yeah, so my next question was for you. Obviously, you just said then about working at the games this year with no crowds. Were they very strict with journalists and commentators obviously speaking to players and coaches? Were they strict on that, or were you allowed to talk to them, but as long as you followed, I'm sure, the AFL?
No, it was all done remotely, really. So you probably saw the press conferences were often done on Zoom, were generally done on Zoom, like we're talking now. And so they would have like a public Zoom that the journalists would call into. When we were getting interviews with players after the game, often they would call our studio, and then like speak to they would call our studio from their phone, and speak to our commentators that way, which is a departure from previous years where obviously you have the boundary rider go into the rooms and then he or she will find a player to talk to. So in that, so it was quite different in that instance. It's just a different way of different workflow of getting the players chat to air after the game. So it did definitely change that kind of stuff. They were very strict on where you couldn't go, and how many were in a box. Like for example, our commentary box is split across two, so as to keep to the social distancing regulations. So there was only the size of the room meant you could only fit 3 people or 4 people in each, and it generally takes a few more than that to get the call to air. So I would be sitting in one room with our tech, and then the callers would be in the other room. So it really changed everything. A completely different experience from 2019 to 2020 for how you go about producing games of footy.
Yeah, right. Fair enough. So obviously for next season, hopefully we get some footy back here in cricket in Victoria. Do you think that it will stay around for a while? Let's say if the government find a vaccine, let's say tomorrow, as an example, who knows if they will or not. Do you think the social distancing and for media being allowed into the rooms and that, do you think that will stay around way after COVID, or do you reckon they'll go back to some type of normality where media and that are allowed to access the players a lot easier?
That's a really good question. It's a really good question, Jed. I think that, it's hard to imagine anything going back to completely normal, isn't it?
Yeah.
Really. So basically, I was saying that I think that we won't be going back to any kind of the way anything was before for us in the sort of medium term at least. So basically, I'd be surprised if boundary riders and reporters and roaming Brian were in the rooms next year as well as this year.
Yeah, that's right. I tend to agree with you on that. I don't think we'll see ones like BT and that roaming in the rooms and chatting to whoever they want to for quite a long time, that's for sure. Yeah, so my next question is for you, Rudi. Obviously for this year, the AFL players, have got this week off in footy. Is there any types of commentators from Triple M? Are they actually going to go up to Queensland and that to commentate the grand final live up there, or are they just going to commentate it back in Melbourne like they have been for this year?
I honestly can't tell you the answer to that, Jed, unfortunately. I know there's been some chat in other podcasts I listened to about getting Brian Taylor up to Queensland, but I think he'd be calling the grand final for 7, not us. But yeah, I can't honestly give you the answer to that. Sorry.
No, that's all right. No worries at all. Yeah. So my next question is for you. So, obviously your main interest is AFL. Do you do any other type of journalism on any other sports, or is it just mainly football?
Footy is my main gig. Yeah. We also have we have a Triple M cricket brand, even if we're not really covering cricket at the moment. So we still have license to cover cricket that way. I do a cricket podcast with Triple M during the summer, and we did one during the Ashes as well last year. And then so that's another one. I love cricket. Always been one of my favourite things in life is cricket. And then also, so the A-League soccer is another one that I cover with my independent podcast, Destruction in the Box, with a few of my mates. We cover that too. So, yeah, many and varied my sporting journalism interests.
Terrific. So you've got some great other sporting interests there, that's for sure.
Yeah. So what about yourself, Jed? You're mostly a footy guy. What other sports do you like?
Yeah, I am. Yeah, so mainly footy, but I actually used to swim myself as Special Olympics. So yeah, my interest is watching the Olympics when they're on, and definitely watching cricket. That's for sure. I love watching the Big Bash when the Aussies play when they're on.
That's great.
Yeah, so you just mentioned then you do your own podcast shows outside of Triple M, obviously. How often would you roughly do your own podcast stuff?
That one, the soccer one, we do every week during soccer season. So that's been running over some of the last few years. The last 5 years that we've been doing it. So we normally start that off in sort of like late September, and then it finishes up around May. Although with coronavirus, that's all changing this coming season. I'm not sure when it'll start and finish. Yeah, so once a week during the summer.
Fantastic. Well, that's good. Glad to hear it keeps you busy then outside of footy.
Yeah.
Yeah, so with obviously the journalism side of it, who are some of the fantastic people that you've either written articles about or you've done interviews yourself on in either AFL or soccer or cricket?
That's a good question. The Triple M footy guys are all great. Obviously, they're all legends. So it's guys like James Brayshaw, Brian Taylor, Wayne Carey, Damian Barrett. Yeah, Tom Brown. I work with Tom Brown in the mornings on the Triple M's Hot Breakfast. He's a great journo and a good man. Yeah, all of those guys are really great. Probably one of my favourite interviews that I did was with a chap called Robelinda. Well, he calls himself Robelinda on the internet. He's a cricket video purveyor. His name's Rob Moody, and he's like a cricket archivist, and he's just a great chat. A really good guy. Yeah, those are the main ones. I like all of our Triple M footy guys are all good to work with.
That's really cool. Sounds great. Yeah, so obviously you said you've been at Triple M for a long time. Did you work at any other media stations or companies previous to Triple M in Melbourne?
Yeah, in 2017 I did digital, like social media stuff for a television show called Sideliners that lasted one season there at the ABC. It was a sort of sports comedy, like variety show.
Yeah.
And that was a lot of fun. One of the sketches I wrote got up on the on TV, which is pretty cool. And yeah, that was a bit of a dream come true. Yeah, but I quite enjoyed the few months I did at the ABC, and that show didn't get renewed, unfortunately. So yes, went back to Triple M after that. I was working 1 day a week at Triple M, as well as full time at the ABC at that point. So I managed to so I kept my foot in the door at Triple M as such,
as well.
While the ABC was going.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, it's a shame that that show couldn't continue at ABC for whatever reasons. Yeah, so obviously with your time over journalism and in the media industry, Rudi, I'm sure you've learnt quite a lot over the years.
Yep, sure have.
Yeah, what would be the 2 or 3 main topics, mate, that you've learnt over the years?
I've learnt how to craft content that people want to consume, I guess, is something that I've learnt. And I guess I've also learnt that that footy is like a fast moving industry that really just really like ticks over. Like you sort of know from the outside, just following it, but it's really it moves so quick, mate. It's like the news cycle of footy is just so fast and full on. It's like it's a pretty much 365-day a year operation, footy media, and that's one of the things I've learnt. And I guess the other thing I've learned is to especially this year, is to not take for granted working in footy, really, because it's kind of everyone sort of has complaints about their job and all that, but I'm sort of have to, if I ever do start to think about, if I ever have a negative thought about my job, I can sort of stop myself and go, hang on. Your job is watching footy. Just, like keep it in perspective.
That's a really good way of putting that.
Yeah. So it's the best job in the world. It's the best job ever. Definitely. I love working in footy.
Sports, that's for sure. Yeah. So I'll ask you a couple more things before I wrap the podcast show up with you. Well, there's some massive things coming up in footy, obviously. We've got finals starting in a week or so's time. We got trade deals already talking. One big question for you is, I know there's a lot of talk in the media. Do you think Joe Danaher will stay at Essendon as a journalist, or do you think I think there was talk of Brisbane and obviously Sydney. Do you think Joe will stay at Essendon, or he'll look for his other options elsewhere?
I'd be surprised if he stayed, to be honest. Yeah. Not that I've heard anything about where he'll go or anything like that. It just, he wanted to leave last year and he hasn't said he wants to stay. So you sort of have to assume that he still wants to go. I think, yeah, I'd be very surprised if he stayed. Are you an Essendon fan?
No, I'm Richmond. I go for Richmond.
You're Richmond.
I thought I'd just ask you that question because I thought might have heard some stuff in the background or something. And as
I thought you might have been an Essendon fan looking for reassurance that he'd stay. But I think he's probably going to leave.
Yeah, I think I tend to agree with you on that one too. I'll ask you one more question before we wrap the show up, Rudi. Obviously, finals are going to kick off. This is the most exciting time of the year. Who do you think can go all the way to the grand final?
Well, now I know that you're looking for reassurance because I think it's Richmond are going to win the flag again, mate. They just look so much better than everyone else, don't they? The way they sort of snuffed out Geelong a couple of weeks ago was scary for the rest of the competition.
Yeah,
really.
That's right.
So, yeah, I think it's most likely to be Richmond. Hopefully this year we get the Richmond Geelong grand final. It feels like we've been building to over the last few years. What do you reckon? You think the same?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it'd be definitely interesting to see how Port and Brisbane go because they're obviously fairly high up at the top. I don't see Collingwood winning it. I don't think they've been in that great form in the last few weeks. Obviously, I know they've had injuries. I know DeGoa and Treloar and that have only just come back recently, and they're missing still Firebottom. But I think a lot of other clubs have had a lot of injuries as well, and I just don't think Collingwood that have been in the form that everyone else knows that they can.
Yeah, it's difficult to come from 8th and a trip to Perth as well. It's an extremely big assignment. Go to Perth first up.
Yeah, that's right. Well, we're all really looking forward to finals kicking off. Thanks so much, Rudi, for coming on and chatting about journalism and chatting about footy and the media industry. Thanks for sharing.
Anytime, mate. Anytime.
No worries. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. Stay tuned for next week's episode. Bye for now.